It was a fleeting thought, but it seemed frightening to me. The wind had begun to howl outside, and the air was thundering. I asked myself, is it noise? Just noise? Or is it, too, a language? And signals like Morse code have their own code and key. Yes, who knows, perhaps it's a universal language, a vocabulary, words. The only thing is that we don't know its code. The window pane suddenly opened and a cold wind blew through. I jumped up, pulling the covers over me in terror as I watched the lightning that pierced the darkness of the sky like a gleaming sword. Yes, all these events could be a divine language whose code we don't know. Who knows how many waves lie beyond these veiled darknesses and radiations? Some we know, some we don't. And behind this eternal silence, beyond these vast labyrinths of space, how many voices are there that we don't hear, and spirits, and specters? And panic seized me. I peered from under the covers, and every piece of furniture in the room, floating in darkness, seemed to me like an entity with its own language and its own soul. And panic crept into my limbs, freezing and paralyzing me. I mustered all my courage, and what felt like hours passed as I nimbly reached for the light switch. The room lit up with a dazzling light, and a cold sweat trickled down my body. I breathed a sigh of relief as I looked around at the familiar pieces of furniture. Each piece was in its place, as still and lifeless as ever, devoid of spirit. I was imagining things that didn't exist. Oh God! I wiped my brow and felt a surge of happiness as I gazed at my familiar room, each piece of furniture silent and still. I felt happy because I was the only living thing in this lifeless place. I was the one who threatened this existence, and it had no power to threaten me. I could move any piece of furniture and throw it into the street. This is my home, my room, my things, all of them are mine. I felt as though I was reclaiming my freedom from these inanimate, scattered objects, and the feeling returned. Self-confidence. And I smiled. Then I laughed. Then I chuckled nervously at those hysterical thoughts that had crossed my mind. It was truly a funny daydream. How did my delusion get to this point? Darkness, silence, solitude, and frayed nerves can wreak havoc on our minds. But I was still thinking. I remembered the events of that difficult day. The whole case remained unresolved. That strange patient, Raghib Damien, there had to be an explanation. I couldn't sleep without finding one. I lit a cigarette and calmly resumed my thoughts, drawing upon all my knowledge in every field. Sounds. All sounds in this universe are indestructible. All forms of energy transform into one another, but they are never destroyed. Electricity transforms into motion, motion into heat, and heat into light. And when sulfur burns and disappears, it doesn't truly disappear. It transforms into gases, fire, and vapors. Everything remains. Nothing is lost in this world. It merely transforms, scatters, and disperses. If we could somehow gather what is scattered in the universe and restore it to its original form, just as we gather radio waves from the air with a small radio and restore them to their original sound, we could know so much. We could gather the voice of Alexander the Great from space and hear what he said on the walls of Acre. Yes, who knows? This is a possibility. Merely a possibility. Merely a theory. Perhaps in the brain of that strange patient, Raghib Damien, there is a special neural pathway that enables him to gather these sounds, just as a radio gathers radio waves from the air and re-encodes them. And perhaps what happened at the moment of his fainting was that this neural pathway gathered those Spanish words from the air that had been lost and scattered in space, and re-encoded them. A fantastical theory, but a theory nonetheless. And it is not without basis. It's the beginning of a thread. A fragile beginning, but a beginning nonetheless. And I rested a little. I went on humming to myself by the window. I turned on the record player and started rummaging through the row of records on the shelf, searching for soft music suitable for bedtime. But the row slipped from my grasp and fell to the floor. An old record broke. I started gathering the broken pieces. In the light, I read the record's title. A Spanish Lament for the Gladiator. The famous Spaniard Don Sebastian. Don Sebastian, the very name the man uttered as he fainted. I didn't understand the meaning of any of it. And I was still looking at the broken pieces of the record, my hands trembling. I had the results of the X-rays, tests, and analyses I'd undergone laid out on my desk. I looked at the X-ray images one by one, scrutinizing them closely, running my finger along every corner of the skull, its shadows visible in the images. No trace leading to a diagnosis, no clue. All the images were normal. The clinical examinations shed no light on the condition. All the tests indicated a completely normal person. The only remaining hope was the electroencephalogram, EEG. That amazing device, the EEG, which had arrived from America a few days earlier. This was its golden opportunity to demonstrate its capabilities. That device records the brain's electrical activity and plots it on a strip. Every electrical impulse emanating from the brain is recorded as a wave on the strip. My heart pounded as I removed the strip from the machine, unfolded it in front of me, and examined it with a magnifying glass. Finally, there was that abnormally high wave, almost tearing the recording apart. A 90 microvolt oscillation appeared once per second amidst the usual short, rapid oscillations in typical recordings. The high-frequency shape and slow, regular frequency of this oscillation clearly indicated neither a brain tumor, epilepsy, inflammation, nor any other known brain disease. I went back to my medical records, publications, and journals, searching for a similar case, but it was a waste of hours. Not a single reference, near or far, to a similar precedent. I remained where I started, lost in the mystery. Not a glimmer of light. After all the medical examinations and meticulous clinical follow-up, I was still in the same place. All I could deduce was that something was wrong. The electroencephalograph confirmed that there was something in this man's brain. Not a tumor, nor any of the known diseases we had studied, but also not the normal behavior of a typical brain. So what was it? Should I return to my philosophical interpretations and say it was a brain with a special neural pathway, like a radio, picks up waves and broadcasts them? Or perhaps there was no illness, no special pathway. It was simply that Ragheb Damian had listened to this Spanish record, as I had, several times, and its meanings and names had seeped into his subconscious. These meanings and names returned to him while he was unconscious, and he began to rave about them in his unconsciousness, as we rave about our memories in our dreams, but he was not calming down. He was speaking perfect Spanish, recounting events that had happened to that so-called Don Sebastian Camilo. And there was in his speech the vitality of someone speaking a language he knew and pronounced like a native speaker, not the confused ramblings of a delirious mind. There was something more to it. All explanations are inadequate. I was immersed in endless, tangled mysteries, thinking, having finished with the patients at the clinic. And I sat waiting for Ragheb Damian, as we had a special appointment. And I suddenly realized that a whole hour had passed since his appointment without him. He arrived. This was unusual for him. He's usually very punctual. A growing anxiety seized me. I found myself jumping up, grabbing my coat from the hanger, and rushing out. I got out of the car in front of the house, 15 Ibn al-Walid Street in Hadayek al-Kuba. I looked around. It was the same address he had given me on the registration form. I asked the doorman about engineer Ragheb Damian's apartment. He said it was apartment 12 on the top floor of the building. The elevator was out of order, so I climbed 6 flights of stairs. I climbed slowly. I stopped every step to catch my breath. While I was leaning against the stair railing and resting for a moment, I noticed a stream of water running down the stairs from above. I followed this strange stream, looking up with curiosity, wondering where the water was coming from. The water was coming down harder and harder, and steam was rising from it as I climbed closer to its source, indicating that it was flowing from a hot water source. In front of apartment 12, water and steam were gushing out from under the door, and I became worried. This was Ragheb Damian's apartment. I placed my finger on the doorbell in a panic, and rang once, then again, a dreadful ring. Then I began to knock repeatedly, impatiently, and bang on the door. No answer, no sound inside except the gurgling of a tap. I stood frozen, lost in a jumble of conflicting thoughts.